Yeah, I mean, it's the same idea as of when we look at the psychology of advertising and stuff like that, and how that could have been used to be able to let people know that advertising fucks with your head, and instead big business was like, oh, that's how it works? I'm going to use that to now just to be able to control people better.
Yeah. This is kind of a scary thing. In one of the podcasts I was listening to, I think Sam Harris had a social psychologist on. I can't remember his name. It might have been Jeffrey Miller. I can't remember. Anyway, he was talking about how one of the things that's really upsetting is that in social psychology, it's really hard to get funding for a lot of different kinds of studies. And the best social psychologists are probably at Facebook. And just they have so much data about what's going on that they can just do incredible studies that then they're not publishing. They're only using to further their own interests.
Yeah, and I think the thing that bums me out most about that is if we look at, we can look at just archetypical structures of how society is supposed to work, and you look at the wise person, and you can look at if we're even contemplating whether or not these individuals are wise, or if they're just purely intelligent and powerful. It's we look at wisdom. The moment a shaman says something that makes everyone pissed at them, he's dead. They kill him, and then they replace him with another shaman. Now, we can't do that kind of stuff. If you're intelligent and you're trying to manipulate people and people see through you, it's well, I have to convince everyone else now, and we have to figure out some constructive way of dealing with it rather than being able to just call them out and do something about it.
Yeah. There is an inherent lack of wisdom in the action of trying to manipulate a bunch of people when you are few kind of thing, But at the same time, when Dan mentioned that you have to be prepared for them to fight tooth and nail, you also have to be prepared in the fact that they are just as wise and as intelligent as you, because that's another aspect that you can't underestimate.
Well, it depends on what we're talking.
Well, I'm saying if you're gonna treat them as a powerful enemy, you literally have to assume that they at least as wise and intelligent as you.
Dude, I'm not going. No, I think you're conflating the things that we're talking about. One is a power struggle. They're way more wise than me in power struggle. They've been doing it this whole time.
Right.
I don't know shit.
Is that itself wise?
Exactly.
Right.
It's meta wisdom.
It's also the difference between tactics and strategy.
Exactly.
Are you thinking, way into the future, or are you thinking I'm going to win the next battle?
Right, and that's what they're good at. I would be.
Yeah. They're ferocious tacticians. Ferocious tacticians.
But if their goal
in the north,
if their goal at all is longevity, it's going to be that they're going to be too flying by the seat of their pants, that they're going to end up in a hole somewhere because the Earth's destroyed, and they could be living, but that's not wise living.
Just don't think you're too better of a strategist than them as well. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think there was any of that in there.
The only thing that we're dealing with here is that they're not admitting to the fact that we're destroying the Earth.
Well, not publicly.
No, by destroying... No, or
I wonder
if they are, they don't care. If they are, they don't care.
Yeah.
They're destroying... if they're willing to destroy the Amazon rainforest, they don't care.
Yeah. Well, this was slipped into... it was 50 pages into a report the Trump administration put out. But I forget which report it is. But it was essentially saying, well, we're not... They were admitting climate change, figures in the Trump administration to put this out. So they were well, it's not going to be fixed, so we might as well just keep developing things as much as we can. So that we come out on top.
Can we ever call ignorance wisdom?
Yeah.
Because that's what they're doing.
I'm just saying, if there are some that want to preserve the power, they must also, be accepting of what problems will prevent them from preserving it, which climate change, a world-ending, or a drastically world-changing thing, that being, it's again, it's the things where they are building these preparations where... You know what I mean? Where it's completely, counterintuitive for what they say.
I really bet some of them think that they're going to come out on top after climate change. Because they think...
after?
No, but check this out. I think some of them think there's going to be a mass culling or die-off of the population.
For sure.
And that they're going to be able to just have artificial intelligence and build a new world on the graves of the human race.
See, those are fundamentally different mentalities, right? So we have people
Might
that
work.
might be
that
denying
noise?
that it's even happening.
Might work though.
We can't have two conversations at once. So
Sorry.
it'll fuck
Anyway.
everything up. So there are people that are denying that it'll happen, and then there are people that are admitting that it is going to happen, and then have different opinions about what to do, right?
Yeah.
So the people that are denying it are just being stupid. They're just wrong, right? And we know that. The people that are admitting that it's real and have different opinions about what to do, that's a different
that's
problem.
true.
And we need. I think it needs a fundamentally different answer
Definitely.
because deciding that it's gonna happen, so you may as well rape the earth while it's rapeable. Like that's not wrong in terms of the science, right? But it could be.
It's not factually wrong, but it's
Yeah.
wrong in every other human sense of the word.
And it's a horrible answer because obviously it's going to make things worse, and that's not good.
See, I'm honestly at the point where I think our answers are like collapse or revolution. And as I've said in multiple times before, I believe in nonviolent revolution. We can get into that if we want to, but I believe we need to overthrow the current power structures.
What about massive shrink?
Massive shrink? What do you mean by that?
Like not necessarily not being mutually exclusive from either of those options you presented, but like as in just people not necessarily a violent conflict or like some kind of thing through like how governing operates now or something like that, but or just ways like just smaller communities like more states essentially, but like smaller more states, and then with more. Area.
Like a breakup of the United States?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, just like having more states and going about it like that route.
How does that solve anything? What are you talking? Like, what are you saying that would do?
Are you saying that would be a way of overthrowing the centralized power structure?
Yeah, just like.
So I mean, if you want to talk about
like dispersing
like
it more,
different forms of revolution, because I think that would be a revolution, in a
right?
sense.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So sure.
Great.
Sure.
Different forms of revolution. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think
I'm like, don't like revolt in like the traditional like cliche kind of sense.
No.
We've talked about that.
my idea of revolution is
That
like
just won't work.
mass
Yeah.
militant civil disobedience to shut down the necessary infrastructure of the system to either force power to be overthrown or to respond in drastic ways to your demands.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that the same definition of what a terrorist is?
Yeah, and apparently that'll get you in a black site for indefinitely. So.
Good luck.
Well, I just also, again, I think that there's the alternative option that I put forth with trying to go through like local governance,
Right.
and trying
And
to actually
like I was saying, I think simultaneously we need to be building local institutions to weather what's coming.
How do you like devalue and hamstring like economic and financial like systems? Because that's what you would need to like do.
Yeah, no, it's actually a lot easier than people think. The people who research and study revolutions say you only need 3% of a population, but they have to be committed to going to jail, losing their everything. They have to be willing to make their life be activism and to totally put themselves on the line. And what that would mean in a tactical sense is things like, blocking major roadways that are important for commerce, blocking major harbors, surrounding political institutions. I mean, physically halting the process. And so what's 3% of the population? We have 350 million.
Mhm.
What would be 3% of that?
No, it's going to be like 11.
That would be
10.5.
10.5? So that's what we're aiming at if we want to.
10.5 million people?
Yeah. Woo! But that's much more easy to imagine once consequences of climate change start kicking in.
true. And
Or a serious economic collapse.
we already established that 8% of the population are progressives, so that's already quite a bit more than we would need. They just have to be progressive enough.
And principled and seized on the correct issues and have an alternative. Here's another thing. If we're going to have a revolution, you sure as fuck better have a clearly articulated alternative that you want to build. You can't just try to break what's there. Because something that happens constantly in history is once there's a revolution, there's a counter-revolution where different authoritarian forces seize control in the vacuum. You have to know exactly what you're trying to build in replace of what you're overthrowing.
The burden of proof, dude. You can't just criticize a freaking argument or
Yeah.
how things are going without coming up with a better solution for it.
Yeah, the burden of proof is a fucking perfect, like, concept for that, because, like, if you think about it, too, if it's massive civil disobedience, like a pessimistic kind of, like, approach to it, or passive approach to it, sorry, but, like, you know, that means you're going to get hit with a stick if you're doing it that way, right? So another strategic, I think, element to that would be making the stick softer when it hits you. And that means, what's their stick? The cops, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, all the enforcement, the judges, everyone in like, the law department, essentially. It's like, you target those people, and then you get the hierarchical, psychology leached out of them, and you, like, rehumanize them in a certain way. I think that's a keystone element as far as, like, the strategic thing, because they're going to be the ones arresting people and forcing people to do things. Like the human, because it's still a human job right now.
Another key element in successful revolutions is to get certain sectors of the power structure to turn sides. Whether that's, you know, the police.
The stick people.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
the weapon people.
The police are often used, you know, by the power structure to enforce against the powerless. But, I mean, they're working class people. They're members of our community.
But if cops understand the decisions being made will make it so that, like, their kids, like, will have a harder life, or, like, their grandchildren are going to have a harder life. Their son they've bred to be a cop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So it's like that kind of just that being like the, you know, panacea to that, essentially, you know? So.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have a movement based off of working class solidarity among all of the people, and something that's not about partisan divisions or tribalism, but about bringing everyone together and, you know, trying to make a better world for all of us. I mean, we need to be looking at people like MLK, you know, people who fought in that kind of way that was about bringing people together no matter, you know, what their divisions or what their classifications. And if we keep getting sucked into these tribal divisions, we're doomed.
Yeah, the adamantine rod that is their stick needs to be like a little piece of, like, styrofoam, like, when it hits us. I think that's really important.
Well,
if you're going to do the proper passive way, because you're going to get hit if you do it the passive way.
Well,
and you need to be able to take the hit. You know what I'm saying?
I don't necessarily think. I do think it depends. I don't think that you have to get hit at all. I really don't. I think there's a way to not get hit.
Well, I'm saying the tooth and nail scenario. Not
Yes.
necessarily
Okay.
getting hit physically, but that too, you know?
Well,
Less
I
we should also know
less
that
of the hitters, whatever that means.
There's
Less of the hitters.
there's
you know?
protection in publicity, and there's protection in, you know, how broad is your movement. I mean, if you're getting, you know, local, you know, families to come out and protest with you, I mean, they're not going to respond in the same way. I mean, you need to realize Occupy Wall Street, for example, terrified them. Because you had people, you know, walking through those places with strollers with their, you know, kids. I mean, it was friendly to the general population. And that kind of thing, where it's inclusive to the sectors of the population that you cannot publicly, you know, damage and get away with it. You need to have that. So, I mean, Noam Chomsky has a famous quote: "There are only two superpowers left in the world: the United States of America and global public opinion." And I think especially, we need to think of the internet and that kind of thing as our main strength.
Wait, what in the public opinion?
The United States of America and global public opinion.
So the opinion of the United States.
No, the opinion of the math people. I mean, if you...
right.
If you
I was just, like, combining those into the same thing.
Anyway. Well, I've had some wine, so I'm a little tipsy, just for the record. All right, well, we are celebrating a birthday in the group right now, so we're going to go ahead and close out the podcast.